There is a technique that people who cry easily learn before anyone teaches them. The slow upward glance, the jaw quietly set against itself. 3 careful breaths through the nose that buy just enough time for the wave to pass before anyone sees it arrive. You know this. You have done it in offices, in classrooms, in cars, in conversations that were not even particularly heavy, but something got through anyway, the way things do, and you had to work to contain it before it showed, to make your face hold for the 12 seconds it needed to hold. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, when the tears come in spite of everything, there is a second thing that arrives immediately after. Not the crying, but the apology for the crying. Sorry, I don't know why I'm being like this. The self-correction delivered to the room, ignore me, I'm fine. The specific, exhausting shame that descends when you feel something visibly in a space that expected you to stay composed. That shame is not a truth about you. It is a message, an old one, and understanding where it came from and what it has been getting profoundly wrong is the entire point. Most people who cry easily can trace the message back to somewhere early, not to a single moment, to a pattern, a signal that arrived from different sources over different years, a parent, a classroom, a peer group, a culture, and accumulated into something that felt eventually like a fact about the world. Emotions are inconvenient. Visible emotions are weakness. Crying, in particular, is something to be managed and kept out of public sight. Boys hear it stated plainly, don't cry. Girls hear a softer variation of the same instruction, don't be so sensitive. The phrasing adjusts by gender and by decade. The message does not. What this teaches children who feel things deeply is not only how to hide it, it teaches them something about themselves, that the intensity at which they experience the world is the problem. That there is something about their wiring, something too much that needs to be corrected, reduced, brought into line with what the room can handle. That belief is wrong. And most people who cry easily have been carrying it for years without anyone offering them a better explanation. Sensitivity is not a character flaw. It is a trait, a documented, measurable difference in how certain nervous systems process the world. Researchers at Stony Brook University spent decades studying this, what they called sensory processing sensitivity, a biological variation in how the brain handles incoming information. Not a disorder, not fragility with a clinical name attached, a calibration. The system turned up by factory setting, past the standard volume. They estimate this applies to roughly 1 person in 5, across cultures, across species. It is not rare, it is not new, it has simply been mislabeled for most of human history. What characterizes this trait is not that these people feel more emotions than everyone else. That framing gets it wrong. What is closer to the truth is that they process more deeply. The same stimulus that registers briefly in most nervous systems and fades, a particular piece of music, a stranger's unexpected kindness, a film scene that leaves everyone else completely unmoved, lands fully in theirs. Not louder necessarily, longer, more complete. The processing runs further down. This is why you can tear up at something no one else in the room reacted to. Why a song on a supermarket speaker can stop you mid-motion before you have made any conscious decision to feel anything about it. Why a small, unannounced act of human decency, someone holding a door, a friend remembering something you mentioned months ago, can bring something to the surface in seconds. It is not performance. It is your nervous system processing the full weight of what just happened. Neuroimaging researchers at a California university scanned the brains of highly sensitive individuals while they experienced other people's emotions. They were looking for mechanism, for what is actually different in these brains, and where. What they found was consistent, significant activation in 2 specific regions. The insula, involved in self-awareness, bodily sensation, and the felt sense of experience, and the mirror neuron system, which is the brain's mechanism for simulating another person's internal state inside your own nervous system. In highly sensitive individuals, Both regions respond more intensely. They activate for longer. The emotional signal arrives and the brain processes it more thoroughly, more completely than in the average nervous system. This is why you can sit across from someone who is trying very hard to seem fine and feel the strain of that effort before they have said anything about it. Why you pick up the shift in a room's atmosphere before anyone has given the room a reason to shift. Why you read the forced expression that doesn't quite reach the eyes the way other people read words. Automatically, involuntarily, without deciding to. You are not reading minds. You are picking up real signals, emotional information that actually exists in the room at a resolution most nervous systems simply do not operate at. When you cry in those moments, you are not losing control. You are responding to something real that nobody else has registered yet. There is a specific kind of exhaustion that people who cry easily know intimately, and it has nothing to do with their own pain. It is the moment a friend is trying to hold it together on the phone, and before they have finished the sentence, something in your chest has already responded. Eyes that fill before you have made any conscious decision to feel anything. A tightness that is physical, not metaphorical, arriving before your thoughts have caught up with it. Psychologists call this empathic resonance, not a metaphor for caring, a neurological process. The mirror neuron system, doing its job so completely that another person's distress briefly becomes, in a measurable sense, yours. The cost of this, which almost nobody names, is that you spend your emotional resources on behalf of everyone around you. You absorb the heaviness in a room before anyone has articulated it. You carry home the weight of a conversation that the other person walked away from, having found lighter. You feel depleted after social situations that others found energizing, not because you didn't want to be there, but because you were fully present to everything moving through the room, and presence at that resolution has a price. These are not your tears for yourself. They are your response to someone else's reality, a signal that you are paying attention at a level most people never reach. Most people feel an emotion, process it, and move forward. The feeling rises, peaks, dissipates. Hours, maybe a day, done. For people who cry easily, this is rarely how it works. You replay the conversation on the drive home. You lie awake thinking about a look on someone's face from weeks ago. You revisit something from years back and find a version of the original feeling still there, still warm, still active, in a way you cannot fully explain. Researchers at Yale spent years studying emotional rumination and found it significantly more pronounced in people with high emotional sensitivity. Not a choice, closer to a reflex. What is consistently misread about this, by the people living it and by the people around them, is the assumption that it means they simply feel too much, more emotions than others, an excess that needs managing. What is closer to the truth is that they feel for longer. The processing does not end when the situation does. It continues, runs deeper, follows the thread further down, and because of that, they often arrive at things that people who moved on more quickly never reach. An understanding of what actually happened, of what the other person was really trying to say, of what was sitting underneath the surface of something long after the surface conversation has ended. The depth that makes you cry is the same depth that makes you understand. For a long time, emotional tears were treated as purely social, a learned signal to communicate distress to others. More recent research tells a different story. Emotional tears, not the tears that keep your eyes lubricated, but the ones connected to genuinely feeling something, have a measurably different chemical composition from other types of tears. Researchers in Minnesota found elevated levels of stress hormones in emotional tears, including cortisol, the kind the body accumulates under sustained emotional load. What this suggests is that crying is not merely a symptom of being overwhelmed. It may be part of how the nervous system actually regulates itself, a mechanism for releasing the biochemical residue of emotional stress, completing a physiological cycle that the body needs to finish. Many people report what follows a genuine cry as a distinct physical shift, a pressure released, something that had been wound tight, settling. That is not drama, That is the body doing precisely what it was built to do. For someone who cries easily, this process runs more frequently. Their system accumulates emotional load faster. The release valve activates more often, not as a sign of instability, but because it is genuinely needed more often. A pressure cooker with a functioning release valve is not broken. It is working exactly as designed. The person who cries when they need to is not falling apart. They are maintaining. Here is the part that almost never makes it into the cultural conversation about emotional people. People who cry easily tend to be among the most genuinely present people in any room. Not because they decided to be, because their nervous systems are running at a fidelity that most people do not operate at. They are typically better listeners, not trained listeners, genuinely attentive ones because they have spent their entire lives tuned to what other people are actually experiencing. They catch what is not being said. They hold the full weight of what someone is going through rather than moving quickly toward a solution. They tend to have a higher degree of emotional self-awareness. They know what they are feeling, and they have developed language for it because they have had to, just to manage their own inner world. And they are still permeable. Despite everything this world does to train people out of sensitivity, the childhood corrections, the professional norms, the cultural ideal of the unmoved, composed, unreadable person, they are still open to the full range of what life actually feels like. The beauty of ordinary moments. The unexpected tenderness that catches you before you can prepare for it. The weight and the strangeness of being alive, which most people have learned, carefully and over years, to stop noticing. That is not weakness wearing the wrong label. That is a form of emotional courage most people quietly wish they had. The strongest person in the room is not always the one who never flinches. Sometimes it is the one who has not traded their sensitivity for social approval, who still allows themselves to feel it, all of it, without needing to immediately arrange it into composure for the benefit of the room. You were told, early and often, that something about the intensity of what you feel needed correcting, that the tears that came whether you wanted them or not were evidence of something fragile in you, that the right response was to learn to hold it back, hold it in, hold it together. Psychology tells a different story. You were not too much. You were just more than the room knew what to do with.